The wounded Wallabies have been bolstered by some serious bulk, but will it be enough to tie the series in the second test on Saturday? We'll find out. Hello amateurs, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be here with you throughout the Lions series and beyond, so hit subscribe down below to follow along. In this video, I'm going to be looking at that team that Joe Schmidt has selected to take on the Lions this Saturday, and we'll start with some squad updates. There are some big names back in contention for the Wallabies this Saturday. Hooker, David Porecki, Will Skelton, massive Will Skelton, very familiar to all of us in the second row. Rob Valentini in the back row, and Lange Gleeson, another great carrying back row option, all available for these Wallabies. And having got bullied pretty much really physically up front, certainly in sort of like the loose exchanges last week, I think they're going to be looking for these guys to really put a stamp on the game this week. So let's get the team up on the screen now, and we'll look at what's been selected. In the front row, James Slipper and Alan Alatoa stay at props, with David Porecki coming back in at hooker. There was some chat, some really interesting chat about Angus Bell with his carrying game. I mean, Ellis Genge has got great carrying game for anybody, especially a loose head prop, but Angus Bell has got to be the best, I think, in that regard. And there was chat, with that missing from this Wallaby team last week, or the team that started last week, whether he should potentially start. But I think if you look at the balance across the balance of the team that's going to start and the team that's going to finish, I think it does make sense for him to stay on the bench for me. Will Skelton comes straight to the second row to partner Nick Frost, and Valentini into the back row to join the excellent Fraser McRoy and Harry Wilson. And again, so they've got carriers there now. So do they need Bell at the start of the game to add to that carrying when you've got Valentini, who's been the Wallabies' best carrier for several years now and is unlikely to finish the game? He has been an 80-minute player for the Wallabies. He has shown a huge amount of resilience. These are things that Joe Schmidt said in the press conference, but back from injury, is he likely to play the full 80? Probably not. So you want some carry coming on off the bench, and Lange Gleeson will provide that, but Angus Bell will as well. Also, you look at the scrum. The Wallabies scrum went really well last week, and I think there would be unwise maybe to mess with that too much. And also, just the number of changes, and this will come, we'll talk about this more when we get to the backs. Joe Schmidt's conscious that it's a team that's sort of less experienced, and they're growing and they're learning all the time. And if you chop and change too much, aside from things that are, really obvious, like bringing Will Skelton and Rob Valentini back in, then you can unstabilize things. So keeping changes to a relative minimum across this Wallaby team here. But that forward pack looks a lot more damaging, doesn't it? It looks a lot more confrontational. It looks a lot more difficult for the Lions to physically dominate as they did last week. They're going to have to bring it, but we shall see if they can. Also, talking about Will Skelton, Joe Schmidt was very keen to sort of express how much experience Will Skelton's got against playing against the Lions players. He's played against them a ton of times from his time at La Rochelle specifically. So he knows these players, and he's won against these players fairly consistently, let's be honest. He has got, and that kind of confidence will spread throughout the squad, just knowing that there's somebody there. It's these tiny little psychological things sometimes that can be built upon, and suddenly you're growing into a test series. He said the similar of Bobby Valentini as well, actually, that he brings confidence to others, just his presence in the squad and what he will give to this team in terms of ball carry. He is a destructive ball carrier, and I think in terms of the game, if the Lions can whack him early, set the tone, that could be a real pivotal moment. Watch out for Tom Curry going after Bobby V in this one. Okay, into the backs, and we have 0 changes from the team that played last week. And actually, the guys out wide I thought did really well and looked quite dangerous. Halfbacks struggled a little bit, but then the Wallabies were really struggling for any kind of go forward at all. So it was very difficult for them. Again, going back to what Joe Schmidt said, he was, he's conscious of making too many changes in one go. Therefore, all these guys get another run out in exactly the same shirts they wore last week. He did say that he was impressed with the guys that came off the bench, and that's pressure on these starting players, which is what they want. So, yeah, it's going to be another tough outing though, isn't it, for Tom Liner after last week, all the criticism that he received or attracted last week. Fair play to Joe Schmidt for backing him again. I think that's quite a brave call. But the right one. I think it's the right one myself as well. I think it's the right thing to do. Okay, onto the bench. And we have a 6-2. And based on the fact that you got Skelton and Valentini both returning from injury, but also on the bench, Lange Gleeson also returning from injury. It's coverage. It's coverage of those forwards that the reason that they've gone for that, and the fact that they've got very adaptable players both on the bench in Ben Donaldson, who can cover 10 and 15, and wing, and wing as well, I think. But then also on the pitch where you've got Harry Potter, who can cover midfield. So they've got the options there to cover the whole back line, and this game's going to be won and lost up front, as most games are. And with a few players just coming back from injury, it makes sense, really does make sense, for a 6-2 bench for the Wallabies. It's do or die time, isn't it, really? And that was the kind of question that was thrown at Joe Schmidt during the press conference. And he did a great job, actually, of talking about it's the here and now, it's the next training session, it's the captain's run tomorrow, and then we get to Saturday, and then we play, and then in the future, there are other games as well. And, when you're in it, you have to be focused on the very next thing, and that's absolutely correct. But of course, what's also correct is that you do have a long-term plan. You do think further forward, and you are doing all that as well. But for these players, these people going into this test match on Saturday, it is a huge game in the MCG, the Melbourne Cricket Ground, a ground that is just huge in Australian sport. I don't particularly like rugby games being played in cricket stadiums. I think it just, you lose a load of the atmosphere. It doesn't look right to me. However, this is a huge stadium and a huge occasion. So, yeah, I'll forgive it. What do I think? What do I think they're going to do? How are they going to play? I think, I don't think tactically they're going to be too different from last week. I think maybe... No, I think they might go the same. I was going to say that the pick and go game that they were quite successful with last week, they might try and do more of. But now they've got those real monster carriers in Skelton and Valentini back in the side, I think they'll try and use them much the same as they did in the first test with one-out runners, but they've got to have options around them as well. Otherwise, if you get three people hitting Will Skelton, he'll still go backwards. So they need to have some subtlety around their play, along with obviously the physicality that these guys will bring. There will be a big pre-game preview that I will do tomorrow, which will go into much more detail on all this. So come back and make sure you see that one. But what do you think of this Wallabies team? Do you think they have got a chance of beating the Lions on Saturday? Do you think it's the right team? Do you think maybe Joe Schmidt should have made more changes in the back line? Let me know in the comments down below, and we'll have a lovely friendly conversation there all about it. Give this video a thumbs up while you're down there. If you don't mind, it helps other great rugby fans just like you find it. And you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. And don't forget to get out and play.